Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be going over an optic that took the shooting world by storm back in SHOT Show 2023. So back in January, and was in such high demand for damn near 6 months. It was like unobtainium. Every time that you would go to check to see what the status of it was on the Primary Arms website, they were never in stock, and the dates for the next batch to come in were constantly being pushed. And that optic is the Primary Arms Nova, as we have here. Now, this optic really sparked my interest because of the reticle design. Primarily, the red dot-like illumination, which in this particular optic, they incorporate something called fiber wire technology, which has been in other optics before, so it's nothing new. But it is new to the Primary Arms line of optics, and one of the other additional things about this optic is that this one, which is one of two currently within their lineup at the time of filming this, is their Gen 4 SLX optics. So, without further ado, let's get into what's in the box real quick, and then we'll move on to the specs. So, as we see here in typical fashion via Primary Arms, you have really nice packaging. On the back here, you have quite a bit of information about the optic, graphics showing the reticle design, and then some more graphics showing the optic itself. Inside, it's pretty basic. You have your manual for the scope, and then your secondary manual for the reticle itself, a cleaning cloth, which you have here, and inside you'll have the optic, which come with scope caps, some Allen keys, so you can make your adjustments. One of the Allen keys, I believe, is for the turrets, the turret screws, so that you can slip those, and then the other Allen key, I believe, is for the throw lever that comes included with the optic, and then your battery, which is a CR2032, which it comes with two, one in the optic and then a secondary here in the side. Very plain, very straightforward, nice graphics on the outside. It's a box, nothing to write home about. But what is to write home about is this optic here, and that is the Primary Arms Nova. So let me see if I can adjust this real quick to make it look a little bit more appealing to the eye and not so dim. There we go. All right, so this is it right here. Specs are as follows. It is a 30mm tube with a 24mm objective. The eye relief is 4 inches, and that is consistent from 1x to 6x. I'll touch on that a little bit later. Exit pupil diameter is 1.6 millimeters at 1x, 3.8 millimeters at 6x. The field of view is 120 feet at 1x, which is huge and is pretty evident when you look through it. And it's 20 feet at 6x. It does sport a fast focus diopter on the back here. You have your magnification range, which is 1 to 6, which comes with an included throw lever, as you see right here. You see that right there. There you go. Does have capped low profile elevation and windage turrets. The elevation adjustment and the windage adjustment is, in this case, 35 mils of total adjustment for both elevation and windage. Their, I believe, Aurora MOA. I forget what the MOA is. I'll put it up here, but this in the Nova reticle, it is in meters for, or mils for the adjustment. Does sport the new ACSS Nova reticle, which is this right here. It is illuminated via fiber wire technology. Does have 11 illumination settings. It runs off a single lithium 3-volt 2032, which again, it does come with a secondary one in the package. The length, not meaning to skip over this, but they don't advertise this, but when I reached out to them, this is the information that was given to me. On setting 5 to 7, you're looking at approximately 300 to 400 hours of battery life, which is not bad for an LPVO. However, small anecdotal piece of information there. Moving on, the length is 10.4 inches without the scope caps. Weight is 17.9 ounces without the scope caps. It does come with a lifetime warranty, and it is made in China. So now that all that is out of the way, let's go through this thing bit by bit. Now, they come with these scope caps, pretty generic. They fit nice and snug. Again, nothing to write home about their scope caps. I typically don't use scope caps unless they're going to be long-term storage, and in that case, I throw them on so that I don't get a lot of dust built up on the lens. But moving forward, starting out with the diopter. So up here is the diopter itself. Come on, zoom in. There you go. You have a fast focus diopter here. Very, very smooth all the way out. There's almost none, if any, movement that I can tell. I can't tell any movement, to be completely honest with you, but very smooth all the way in, all the way out. Very nice. There is quite a bit of tension on it. When you first get out of the package, it is very stiff. You have to work it back and forth, and then eventually it will smoothen out. It is under quite a bit of tension. Easy to manipulate for the most part. However, under enough tension that it's not going to be easily bumped out of your set adjustment. Moving on to the magnification ring. Again, it's stiff out of the box, but you work on it back and forth and it will loosen up. It is stiffer than, say, the PLX line or the previous SLX Gen 3 optics. However, it's not to the extent of some other YouTubers had tried to portray it, at least in my situation. That may be the case for them, but in my personal experience with this guy, it was stiff out of the box. You work it back and forth, and it's got way more tension than, say, the PLXC does, but easy to throw over, no problem. I will say that after a sit for a long period of time, I'm talking about a week or so, it kind of will settle in, and then it'll be initially hard to move, and then it'll loosen up. However, when you continually work on it, it will loosen up and stay like that for the majority of the time. Again, it does come with this included throw lever, which I think is absolutely fantastic. And I think all LPVOs should come with some type of included throw lever. Doesn't cost much to manufacture. There's other cheaper options that can come that you can add in, and the fact that Primary Arms is doing this now is a huge thing, and I really enjoy it. And moving forward to the turrets, as you can see, they are subdued. So the Primary Arms is subdued in color, so you can see right there. Same thing on the side here. You have low profile caps, which are sealed via O-ring, and they both look like so. So some of the previous models, you would have to set them, you slip them, basically just turning them, and then you would either pull up and slip them, or, which were spring loaded, or they had that stupid little like plastic thing on the inside that you would turn to set to the 0. These are much nicer. The laser engraving is way better than the previous models or previous styles. They do slip like traditional rings. You have 3 set screws that you undo, slip it, and then set it back. I do like these turrets for the most part. Don't know if this is going to pick up, but super audible, very tactile. However, the detent doesn't have a whole lot of tension, so there you can easily move them with very little pressure. which would be a point of contention for me if this was exposed. However, since they're not exposed, they are capped, I have no issue with these particular turrets. I do have quite a bit of rounds. I want to say I have close to 500 rounds on this optic alone, over 1,000 on this rifle, which is the PSA Sabre. Haven't had any issues with losing my zero because of those soft detents. I will say that I have taken this out to distance, and I did dial for it at 600 yards, and I was able to repeatedly dial back to zero, back out to my hold, back down to zero, and it was repeatable every time out to 600 yards. No issues other than that. I just pretty much held using the reticle. Put these back on real quick before I continue on. Next up is the illumination. So on the left side, you have your illumination setting. On the outer portion here, you have your battery compartment, which can be opened or accessed without any tools, although they do give you this little coin slot if you want to use a flathead or like a quarter to open. You can do that. So it does utilize 2032, and you have 11 illumination settings. So let's see if this is gonna show up. So 11 illumination settings. 2, very nice. 3, all the way through. My only gripe is that there's still no stops in between, and you don't get that until you move up to the GLX line. I understand that's an additional feature,
7,
but there are other companies that are adding that feature in on their entry-level
9,
options. So
10.
I think that was kind of a miss for primary arms, being with their Gen 4. I think their Gen 4 should have incorporated that. Even if it was just a slight increase, that would have been nice to see. The other thing that I'll say in reference to the turrets and the caps themselves is that the previous generations used to have a cap that would hold an additional 2032. So out in the field, if your stuff went dead, you had a battery on hand that you can utilize. They went away from that, which kind of sucks, but I don't think that it's a selling point in the way that somebody's not going to buy this optic over it. It's just a point that I used to like, and they no longer incorporate it. That being said, I do like the turrets. They are repeatable, as I have tested them, and I just wish the detents were stronger, or at least the spring for the detent was stronger, so you're not worried, or at least have a lot more confidence in the turrets themselves. Otherwise, up to date in terms of shooting, which I haven't beaten up on it, but just taking it out to the range, done some fast fires, firing out to distance, dialing, stuff like that. They've been just fine. Moving on to the glass. So the glass quality is definitely better than it was in the past. Very nice. The fisheye effect is nowhere near what it was in the previous models, primarily the 1-8 SLX. Primarily their first focal plane, not so much their second focal plane, but in their first focal plane, there was quite a bit of fisheye. Was it debilitating or unusable? No, but it was definitely noticeable, especially when you got behind better glass. In this case, you have some fisheye effect, but it kind of starts about a third of the way out from the center, but it's not super warped. It's noticeable, and it's kind of hard to explain. I don't know if I probably will have video here showing what that looks like, but it's there. It's not bad. Under practical shooting conditions, I didn't notice it, but if you're looking for it, you're going to notice it. And that's kind of the best way that I can explain that. Again, under practical shooting, I never once noticed the fisheye effect on the outer 2/3 of it. But, you know, when you're especially up close, like indoors, you will notice it pretty quickly. As far as that fisheye maintenance, maintaining that optical effect on out. It's noticeable at 1 and 2x. At 3x, it almost completely disappears. And then beyond 3x, it's a very, very flat image. Very nice. Again, I should be rolling in some footage to give you a visual of all this. The glass does have a slight tint to it, almost like a dirtiness. It's kind of hard to explain it, but it does have a tint. It's very hard to explain the tint, but it's noticeable. However, it doesn't impede your ability to use the optic. It's just there. Again, under practical shooting conditions, I don't notice it, but if I'm taking the time to look at my scenery outside of the scope and inside the scope, I can see it, but it's a very, very slight tint, almost like a brownish tint. But otherwise, again, doesn't impede the ability to use it. And compared to previous iterations of their SLX line, I believe that this is better glass. Again, it just has that weird, you have that fisheye, which is nowhere near as bad as it was previously. And you have that weird, dirty, like brownish off tint. It's kind of hard to explain. But anyway, that is there. Going out to distance, very clean, no problem picking up targets. Most of my shooting was done at a 600-yard range out at Tommy Guns in Greeley, Pennsylvania. And they do have targets, but they're not consistently painted. So they're pretty shot up, and sometimes they blend in with the backdrop. With this particular optic, I was able to see up to 10-inch circles. I believe the 6-inch ones too, out at 600 yards, pretty shot up, no real white paint left on it. And I could pick up those targets pretty easily with this optic. Could you do better with better glass? Absolutely. But for the price point, I think the glass is pretty damn good. On to the reticle. So the reticle is unique to primary arms because it doesn't utilize their chevron. And I think that has to do with the technology itself. I don't know if it's possible to use the fiber wire technology on things outside of a dot. But in this situation, the illumination was very good when it comes to the reticle. On lower magnification settings, you'll notice that it's kind of like a square rather than a dot, which is not a big deal, but it makes it a very, very clean illuminated center. It is extremely bright, even on super bright, like high noon, no clouds, as bright as the sun wants to be that day. You can hold this right up to the sky and see the red dot. It is super, super bright. So there's no reason that anybody would not be able to use that reticle like a red dot, especially on one power with both eyes open, doing snapshot shooting. It's going to be very, very effective. The reticle is cool as it is second focal plane, which I'm not a huge fan of second focal plane. However, in this particular application and the way the reticle is set up, it makes a lot of sense. So you have a crosshair, which I'll show you here. You have a crosshair. In the center is your illumination point. And then down below, you have horizontal stadia that can be used to range targets 18 inches wide or 19 inches wide out to about 500 yards to 600 yards. I believe it's 600 yards. 19 inches wide. You have vertical stadia on the left and right of center, and those are for moving targets. So the first two are going to be a 3 and a 6 mile an hour, and then the outer portion of the thin section of the reticle where it turns into the thicker portion of it, that's going to be your 9 mile an hour hold for moving targets. Works very, very good. I, again, took this out to 600 yards. I was able to make confirmed hits using my drop on this 3.7 inch PSA Sabre out to 600 yards very effectively. Out to 400 yards, super easy, hold no problem. 500 starts to get a little difficult because of the thickness of the reticle itself. And then out to 600 because you're dropping below that thicker portion of the crosshair. It's almost impossible to use. Can you reference and hold on an IPSC size steel target? You can. However, I did dial specifically for 600 and was able to make first round hits no problem whatsoever. And I did that multiple times, going from 600 back down to 1 to 6, and redialing for 6 every time, including holding, and I was able to make hits successfully. If you're not using the reticle as designed for, say, a 16-inch with a specific load that coincides with that drop, it's going to be difficult to hold for the further shots out. Otherwise, reticle is very usable. It's very nice. You have a lot of open space that you can use for positive identification purposes. If you want to glass terrain or potential targets, it's very good. So, what is my overall thoughts and my experience been with this? From day one, I was pretty impressed with it. Having ran it primarily on this 13.7, it has impressed me even more. I think that it's a high value option from Primary Arms. I don't think that there is another optic on the market that gives what this gives, or brings to the consumer what this does at the price point that it does, especially when you find it on sale. Now, I was able to get this on sale through Optics Planet for $288. They MSRP, I believe, $340. And even at $340, it's a fantastic value. But at $288, it just elevates it. And for everything that you get, it's hard to beat. I don't know another optic in this budget category with the price point offering what this does. I don't think there's another optic out there. And I think that if you're looking for an optic that's going to bridge the gap from you being a red dot shooter to moving into the magnified space, this is going to be the perfect optic, there we go, to bridge that gap between the red dot shooters, or those going from a red dot with a magnifier to a more traditional magnified optic, primarily these LPVOs, coupled with the huge field of view, the cap turrets, which are mandatory in my opinion for LPVOs. If you're looking for something that's like a GPR, this is your setup right here. This is a perfect setup. 13.7, 13.9, 14.5, 16-inch, like that. This right here is your perfect setup. Lightweight package. You have your 1 to 6 that has a really good glass for the price. Really good image through it. You have the red dot. You can use it on one power like a red dot, so you can use it in confined spaces and, you know, close quarter combat, which is more than just indoor fighting for those that have that perceived notion of what CQB is. But you can use it on 1X, and then when you need to look out further for potential targets or hazards, you have the ability to do that, with the ability to reach out and touch something should you need to. Overall, I think this is a fantastic option for the price point. I think, minus the lack of stops in between the illumination settings, which would have been perfect on an option like this with a reticle that's super bright and geared towards being used like a red dot, that was a miss. Aside from that, I think this optic just kicks it out of the park, or hits it out of the park. So, that being said, I think this is a fantastic option for those on a budget. I don't think anything else comes close to it in this budget category. And I think if you are interested in something like this, don't hesitate to buy. Very, very good optic. Primary Arms doesn't know who I am. They don't know that I make these videos. This is me as an individual who buys these things with his own money and does this testing with no help from anybody else or any other company. Everything is funded completely by me. These are my opinions, my thoughts, and I say that so that you know I'm not shilling for a company. I will never do that. My goal is to bring my personal experience to you so that you can take that as a small anecdotal piece of information and use that should you need to make a informed and basically an informed purchase. Rather than just jumping on the hype train based on what other people may say, you can use my small little bit of information along with a ton of other people to say, hey, okay, maybe this optic is good for me, or maybe it's not. But at least I'm always going to be truthful with you, and that's what we got here. I think this is a great option, and buy with confidence. Aside from that, thanks for watching. Let me know what you think down below. If you have one of these, tell me what your experience has been with them. If you're looking into one of these, let me know why you're looking into one of these, and let's just have a conversation. Love having a conversation with people, talking back and forth, and thanks for watching. I'll catch you in the next one.